Ever notice how, like, when you get into some new topic, suddenly, like, everything seems connected back to it?
Mm,
That's cybersecurity for me
yeah.
lately. And not even just the tech stuff, but, like, how it's about understanding people.
Right.
Psychology, the history of how we do things, even, like, design choices, how that influences how we act online. It's wild.
It's true. Cybersecurity so often comes down to understanding people,
Hmm.
how they're persuaded, how they're manipulated.
It's kind of creepy when you think about it.
Yeah, it's an element that's often overlooked, in the bigger picture of security.
So that's what we're digging into today, this whole fascinating overlap between cybersecurity, but on that human behavior level. And we've got these excerpts from this book, The Language of Cyberattacks. Don't let the title scare you off. It's surprisingly readable for, an academic kind of book.
Yeah, it really gets into the psychology behind all these cyber attacks.
And it does it in a way that's like actually easy to follow.
Yeah.
So they kick off with this concept of a lure, right? Like we all know about phishing emails and stuff.
Mhm.
But here's where it gets kind of meta. The author points out how this lure idea, it's not even just a tech thing. Like you see it in psychology, marketing, history even. There's this study they cite on the lure of choice, and basically it found that having more options can actually make us more vulnerable, even if the options themselves are all kind of bad.
Yeah, it's almost counterintuitive.
It is.
But it makes sense when you think about, how our brains work. We're just constantly bombarded with information, choices all the time, and you get so many options. Your brain's just looking for a shortcut.
Like, get me out of this decision.
Exactly. And so we tend to make decisions impulsively rather than carefully considering them. And cybercriminals totally exploit this, They
Oh,
overwhelm us with options, make it more likely we'll slip up.
it's like when you're staring at a menu that's like got 80 things on it and you just end up picking whatever's at the top.
Right.
And then you're like, ugh, I should have gotten the other thing. But that's what this book is saying,
Hmm.
that cyber criminals, they're masters at creating that sense of gotta act in now or that confusion.
Exactly.
And boom, we're clicking without thinking.
Yeah, they prey on those emotions.
Yeah.
Fear, excitement, that sense of urgency.
Exactly.
Think about those phishing emails. They're designed to look like they're from your bank, saying, oh, we detected some suspicious activity.
Yeah.
It's all about creating that panic so you don't think, you just click.
It's like they're hacking our reflexes almost. And there's this one part really stuck with me.
Yeah.
So the book talks about how a lot of times the social engineering stuff works best when we're already in a state of like indecision.
Oh, interesting.
So like we're busy, we've got a million tabs open in our brains, and then bam, some message pops up, needs us to do something right now.
Yeah.
Usually about something like a bill or some kind of alert, makes it seem super urgent.
Right. And that's when our defenses are at their lowest. We're more likely to skim, click that link without really thinking about it.
It's scary how they know like the exact moments to target us.
That's why recognizing those cues, those tactics, is so important. They're designed to trigger those automatic responses.
So it's not even just knowing what to look for, it's about knowing like, okay, I'm in a vulnerable headspace right now.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be extra careful. This book, it actually goes beyond just, the digital world. It's saying cybersecurity isn't just on the internet anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Our phones, homes, cars, even like big important infrastructure stuff.
It's all connected. Yeah, totally. The book, it makes a big deal about how intertwined everything is getting now.
Mm-hmm.
This whole cybersecurity thing, it's way bigger than just our devices and the data on them.
Right.
Right.
And it's morphing so fast, too. One of the things they get into is AI, specifically how it's going to be used, or probably already IS being used, to make even more, like, believable traps.
Oh, absolutely. I could take this manipulation stuff to a whole other level.
It's kind of terrifying, actually.
Yeah. Imagine getting a phishing email, but it's not just got your name in it, like the basic stuff.
Right.
It's written exactly like someone would talk, like a close friend, a coworker even.
That's creepy. How do you even fight that?
That's a huge GE question the book asks.
Yeah.
Like, what are we protecting at this point? It's not JC data, right?
No, it's like your whole life, almost.
It's our identities, our culture, history even. These attacks, they can have outcomes in the real world, not just losing money, but
Yeah, it gets kind of existential.
it makes you realize the stakes are so much higher than we usually think about.
Totally. And it's not even just about each of us being careful either. The book, it points out how certain groups are like targeted way more.
Yeah.
Marginalized communities, researchers, activists.
Absolutely. They often have information or they work in ways that makes them super vulnerable.
So they need protection just as much, but
But they might not have the resources to support.
right, which is a whole other problem. It's like cybersecurity has to be about fairness too, not just who's got the fanciest software.
Exactly. Everyone needs the knowledge, the tools to protect themselves.
100%. Speaking of which, they actually use a really interesting case study to show how these attacker groups like operate. The Conti ransomware gang, you remember them?
Oh, yeah. How could you forget?
They wreaked havoc everywhere. Hospitals, infrastructure, like, didn't matter to them.
What's fascinating is somebody leaked their internal chats, even training manuals.
Oh, right. It was like a gold mine for researchers.
Exactly. This rare look into how they thought their tactics.
I remember reading about how obsessed they were with this organized chaos idea.
Sounds contradictory, right?
Yeah.
But for their strategy, it made sense.
How so?
They did it on purpose. Create chaos, confusion, to overwhelm their targets. Harder to defend that way.
So they weren't just technically good, they were like messing with people's heads on purpose.
Exactly. And the book emphasizes this. Understanding the psychology of the bad guys is just as important as any technical cybersecurity stuff.
And that takes us right into my favorite part, the whole social engineering section. They go deep on the psychology of how manipulation works. They even talk about like Freud and then experts like Christopher Hadnagy, who's written tons on this.
Yeah, Hadnagy's work is super interesting, but he's also controversial.
How come?
Some of his methods have caused this whole debate about ethics. Like, even when social engineering is used for teaching, is it okay?
Huh. I can see how it'd be a fine line.
Exactly.
Like, the book also mentions those phishing simulations some companies do for training, trying to trick their own employees.
Right. On one hand, it raises awareness,
Yeah.
but some people say it creates a culture of fear, distrust.
Which is counterproductive almost.
It's a tough balance. And the book suggests maybe instead of just tricking employees,
Yeah.
focus on giving them the knowledge, the skills to make smart decisions online themselves.
So it's more about empowerment, not just tricking them.
Exactly.
Almost like instead of teaching people to spot the tricks, you teach them to think like the trickster, you know?
Exactly. It changes your whole perspective.
Yeah. This book, it really got me thinking about the emotional cost of all this. Like,
Yeah.
we are constantly being targeted, even if it's subtle, by this online manipulation stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's exhausting.
It really is.
Yeah.
In the book, they actually call it emotional labor. Like, the mental energy it takes to just exist online these days.
Yeah, makes sense.
Trying to figure out what's real, what's fake, who to trust. It's nonstop.
It's like you can't ever really relax, you know,
Yeah.
just waiting for that next phishing thing or some website that's designed to, like, trick you.
And as tech gets even more advanced, it's only going to get harder. That's why the book, they argue that self-awareness, emotional intelligence, that's essential now, like just as important as the tech side of things.
So it's not enough to have a good password anymore. No. It's about being resilient, inside your own errand head, against these tactics.
Wow. So we got to be more mindful of how easily our emotions are manipulated online.
Exactly. And that might mean taking breaks from tech, being careful about getting overloaded with information,
Yeah, I feel that.
and being picky about who and what we trust online.
It's like every click, every little interaction, it could be trying to persuade us of something.
That's the world we live in now.
Wild. So
Yeah.
we got to get better at making conscious choices about like what we even see online,
Yeah.
you know, what we let into our heads.
Be critical consumers of everything, not just products, but ideas, information, the whole 9 yards.
This deep dive has been honestly kind of intense, but in a good way. Made me realize cybersecurity, it's not just about devices and data anymore. It's about protecting ourselves, our peace of mind, our well-being.
100%.
Like, can we even think critically when the internet's designed to mess with our heads? It's a whole thing.
It is, but being aware of it is the first step.
Right. Like you said, awareness, that's where it starts.
Exactly.
So everyone listening, as you're out there exploring the digital world, remember, it's more than just ones and zeros. It's about understanding how people work, online and off. Build that resilience, because the more aware you are of how persuasion works, the safer you'll be.
Well said.
At the end of this podcast, please share your thoughts on the book, and if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.